Have you ever wanted to take a transparent PNG image like this, or maybe this, and turn it into an animated green screen video like this one, or maybe this one? Well, that's exactly what we're going to do today. And we're going to be doing it for free by using a software program called Tahoma2d. Now, you may never have heard of that. Let's go ahead and open up a web browser here. And here is Tahoma2d, and by the way, all the links will be in the description down below. It's available for Windows, Mac OS, and Linux. Today we'll be working in Windows. Now, if you've never heard of Tahoma2d, and it's quite likely you haven't, it is actually a branch of a program called OpenToonz. And OpenToonz is the open source free version of a commercial program called Toonz with a Z. Kind of like OpenToonz. And that software is widely known as being the software that's used by Studio Ghibli in Japan to make all these great animated features that you very likely have heard of or seen over the years. So that's a little bit of the background behind the software. It's obviously incredibly powerful. But what we're going to do is just learn the very basics of how to animate a PNG image. And the reason why we're using a PNG image is because we'll need a transparent background. And that's very important. So for example here, I'm going to openclipart.org. And this is a really great site here. And I've typed in Easter Bunny, by the way, which is kind of close to the holiday here. And let's say we want to use this little guy right here. What I would do for this project is I'd click on this guy. And now in openclipart.org, their kind of claim to fame is downloading these as SVG or vector graphics. But we want the PNG version. And typically, by the way, the medium-sized one fits into the software really well without resizing. So, you know, if I wanted to grab this bunny, I would go ahead and click on the medium size here and downloading. Now, by the way, you can animate pretty much any character or object that you want. However, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be bending these characters. And so if you notice, like here, this bunny is holding this Easter egg and he has his hands right in front of his body. You know, we can wiggle these around a little bit. We can kind of move them a little, but we're not going to be able to like create like arms with these. Same way with the feet. We can maybe move his feet up and down a little bit and kind of, you know, maybe move them side to side a little, but we're not really going to be able to, you know, create magically fully articulated arms and feet for this bunny. Now, of course, we can bend his ears, you know, we can move his little nose, we can move his little tail, you know, and we can also make him hop around on the screen if we wanted to. But basically, the more that your character kind of has open arms and legs, the more flexible you're going to be in animating, as you'll find out here a little bit later. But again, if we found a transparent PNG that we like, we can just download it here. I'll go ahead and I'll download this bunny. I'm just going to right click it and say save image as, and we'll go ahead and we'll throw him on the desktop. Now, one trick here is with the Tahoma2d software. It uses versioning numbers in its internal naming of files. And so the one thing you do not want is any sort of extra numbers or periods or special characters in the name of your PNG images that you're going to bring in. So I would change this from 23052 to maybe something more descriptive like Easter Bunny. And this automatically can put the PNG at the end for me. So I'm just going to hit save. But just make sure that you don't have any sort of weird or funky names. If they are weird or funky, rename the file before you bring it in to Tahoma2d. So now we've got a file to work on here. Let's go ahead and download Tahoma2d. And again, I'm going to be using the Windows version. Now you notice they all say portable here. And what that means is this software does not install. It runs from the directory that you're going to unzip, because these are going to be zip files. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on our Windows 64-bit portable here. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put it on my desktop. Now, of course, you could download it some other place and unzip it, but just make sure you know where it's unzipped to, because that's where we're going to be running the software from. So I highly recommend that you put it on your desktop, at least to start with. So I'm just going to go ahead and accept the name here, hit save, and this is going to download it. May take just a second here, but it should be done. Now if I come out here, sure enough, here is a zip file on my desktop. And all I'm going to do is I'm just going to right click on that, and we're going to extract this zip file. Now, by the way, Windows has an extract all function built in. I do have 7-zip on here. It's dramatically faster. So I'm going to use 7-zip, but if you don't have 7-zip, you just click extract all and accept the prompts, and it's going to extract it here. But I'm going to click extract here, and it's extracted. There we go. And so now here's the actual Tahoma2d folder on my desktop. Now actually at this point we could go ahead and we could, for instance, delete the zip file. We really don't need it, but I'm going to leave it on there for right now. To use the program, what you do is you're going to double click and open up the Tahoma2d folder, and you're going to scroll down and you're going to find Tahoma2d, and you notice we have this little T icon over here, red and orange T icon. Now of course you could always just do this. You could open up that folder, you just scroll down and find Tahoma2d. But under Windows, you can create a shortcut, which is really nice. So that's what I'm going to do. So it'll be an icon on my desktop, and I won't have to keep going into this folder over and over again. So let's go ahead and we're going to right click, and I'm going to do send to, and then I'm going to select desktop, create shortcut. All right, and if you notice, it created my Tahoma2d shortcut right here. And at this point, I can just close this folder down, and I can run the program from here. Now, I cannot delete this folder here though, because that's actually where the program really is. This shortcut is just a quick way to point to that. So you do not want to delete this folder. If you don't like it being on your desktop, copy it to somewhere on your C drive or D drive or wherever you would like, and use it from there. But if you delete that, as you're going to find out here in a minute, it will actually delete all your projects and everything, because it's going to store everything in this folder, wherever that folder is located. So let's go ahead and get Tahoma2d started. And you might be wondering why we're using Tahoma2d and maybe not kind of the software it came from, which was OpenTunes. And the reason why is OpenTunes interface is a lot more complicated, and also it does not have the built-in ability to create video files or MPEG-4 files like we're going to be wanting to do. And Tahoma2d has both of those things. Has a simpler interface, so it's a little less intimidating, and also it can natively create MPEG-4 files. So let's take a look here at this little startup button, or box rather, and there's a couple of things here. Notice the current project is Sandbox. That's the built-in project that it automatically creates for you, but you can always just create a new project, and basically a new project is just a name. So if you wanted to create work on Easter scenes for today, or maybe a Santa scene or whatever, maybe you'll have a Christmas project, maybe you'll have an Easter project, maybe you'll have a Halloween project, stuff like that. So projects in store one or more scenes, and a scene is basically a little animated segment. Okay, so now we're going to keep it simple today. So we're going to leave this sandbox, and I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to type in a scene name here. And I've downloaded several images, by the way, and I'm going to start off, and I'm going to do one for Santa here. We're going to make him animated, and so I'm going to call this Santa 1. All right, maybe it's the first Santa scene here. The other thing that we can check on down here is the size of our animation, and right now it's 1920 by 1080, which is 1080p, which is a great size for most videos. Now you notice the frame rate over here is 24. I am going to go ahead and I'm going to change that to 30. Just because my videos are typically 30 frames per second. Now movies are typically 24 frames a second, and maybe if you're in Europe you might like 24, 25 frames a second. But for this example today, we're going to set it at 30, and I think that's going to work well for most people too. You have a few other options down here, like open up another scene or automatically save every 15 minutes. By the way, it is a good idea to save in Tahoma2d. It can be a little bit crashy on certain machines sometimes. The kind of same with OpenTunes, unfortunately. So, save often. It's a great program. It's totally free. It can do some amazing things, as you're about to see, but it's not super stable all the time. So if you feel more comfortable, you can click on this automatic save. I'm not going to bother with that today. All right, I think we're all done, so I'm just going to hit create scene here. And now we've created our scene. And again, this is like a little, if you had a stage play or something like that, this would be like the first opening act, right? So this is a scene in our movie that we're creating here under our project. So in this scene here, the first thing I want to do is I want to create a chroma green or chroma blue, or maybe probably some other color, black or whatever, background for this scene. And that's because I want to make a green screen video out of it. And of course, green screen and blue screen and other color background videos can be made transparent. So to do that, we're going to come up here to the scene drop down menu in the upper left here, and we're going to go to scene settings. And you notice we've got our frame rate up here. Again, if we forgot to change it earlier, we could change it right here. And here is the background color for the camera of this scene. And we're going to go ahead and change it to chroma green. Now, chroma green and these weird little numbers over here is 0, 177, whoops, 177 in the green value, and 64 in the blue value, and that's chroma green. Now, if you wanted chroma blue, that would be 0 in the red, 71 in the green value, and 187 in the blue value. And if you wanted black, you'd do 0, 0, and 0. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to change this back to chroma green. There we go. So we'll have a nice kind of standard green color for masking out in our video editing software. So I'm done with that. I've double checked my frame rate. I've set my background color. So I'm just going to close that. Now there's one more thing that I want you to do. There's a few preferences I think that you are to change in Tahoma. Let's go ahead and just do that right now. So I'm going to do File, and I'm going to come down here to Preferences, which by the way is Control U. Notice it's got little shortcuts out here to the side. And we're just going to set a few different things. First of all, under saving, you can turn on that automatic saving right there. So if you wanted to, if you wanted it, but you forgot to do it at the beginning, you can do it right there. But the ones I really want to change are down here under Animation. And I want to change this default interpolation, which sounds really like a fancy word there, to ease in and ease out. Now, what that is the Tahoma2d software, when we tell it like a character, like let's say start on the left side of the screen and move over to the right side of the screen, it's going to automatically figure out where, all the intervening parts of that animation. So, he's just not going to go from the left side of the screen to the right side of the screen. He's going to smoothly, slide across. Linear, by the way, would be, pretty much smoothly sliding across. But that's not the way that typically animated characters move. They oftentimes start a little slower, and then they end a little slower. Just like if you were really to start running across a room, when you first start running, you have to overcome that inertia, right? So you're kind of slow. But of course, when you get near the other wall, on the other side of the room, you want to slow down before you stop. And so you're going to slow down there. And so this creates, a much more pleasing animation effect for when Tahoma2d automatically does all this work for us. And so I like ease in and ease out. Now, if you're doing, some outer space simulation or something, spaceships flying around, you may not want ease in and ease out. You've got several other options over here. And so you might want to play around with that. But for today, with animating kind of cartoon characters, let's do ease in and ease out. And there's one more thing I want to do down here. I want to come down here to onion skin, and I'm going to turn this off. And by the way, look at our little this little guy down here. You know, it's like a little red stick with a kind of like a lollipop thing here with a little ball on the top. Look what happens when I turn that off. It changes that little lollipop there on the top. And what that means is if you leave onion skin on and you accidentally kind of click and drag on the top of that, kind of get off to the side, it'll start creating these kind of ghost images, which is onion skins, which are a tool used by animators in order to kind of see a ghost image, so that way when they're redrawing the character, they kind of have a reference to draw to or whatever. But we're not going to be doing any of that today, so we want onion skin off. All right, so I've set those settings here, and so I'm just going to close that down. Now, right now might be a good time to save, and you can tell it's unsaved because, as it says up here at the upper left, says Santa 1, that's the name of my scene, and a little asterisk, that means we're not saved yet. So I'm just going to do File, and then Save All, and notice that's also Control S, so let's go ahead and save that. So now we are ready to go. So, what the easiest way to get stuff into Tahoma is to simply drag it in. So I'm going to go find my character here, and I have two Santas here. One is that medium-sized Santa, and he's going to fit great when I bring him in here. But I am purposely going to bring in an image that is too large to easily fit, and that way we can show you how to resize images. So I'm going to drag this guy in here, and we're just going to drop him in, and it brings up this box here. It says, hey, you know, this image is not in your current project. Do you want to import it or load it? And the difference is, if you load it, it is actually going to go and grab this image right here from my desktop every time we work on this scene. But if I do an import, it's actually going to make a copy of this image into the internal folder structure of Tahoma2d, and it's going to keep a separate copy. And that means if I, go in here and maybe delete this image off my desktop, it will not mess up or break my scene because Tahoma has its own internal copy. I always like to do import, and so I'm going to click on import, and boom, right there we go. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to maximize our screen here again. And so now we've got our Santa in here, and he's looking great, but he's way too big. This green area is the area that's kind of our stage for animating. So we need to make him smaller. So what we want to do is we want to zoom out, and there's a couple of ways to do that. One is you can use the scroll wheel of your mouse, and if I scroll down, I zoom out. If I scroll up, I zoom in. And the other way of doing that is with this little magnifying glass icon right here that says zoom. Shortcut is shift space. And if I click on that and I come over here and I click and hold down my mouse button, if I drag down, he gets he's smaller. If I drag up, he gets bigger, right? So I'm going to drag down here and make it so I can see all of my Santa here and all the background too. Now what we want to do is we want to select our Santa so we can resize him. And so I'm going to use this little arrow over here, which is the second one from the top. It's the selection tool, or S, you can also press. And then that's going to kind of drag a box around our Santa here. And it is automatically going to select him. And you notice it's put a resize box over here. Now, I can just grab one of these and I can resize our Santa, but you notice I can make him like really skinny or really fat and short and tall, and maybe you want to do that, but I want to resize him so he stays the same proportion. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press Control Z, and that's going to undo changes. By the way, always remember that if you mess up something in here, Control Z will undo those changes. And instead, I'm going to take a reselect him here. There we go. Now I've got to reselect it. I'm going to hold down my Shift key while I resize, and then that's going to keep him the same proportion in size. So he can't ever be too fat or too skinny. He'll always remain the same proportion he is right now. And once I get him to about the right size, I'm going to let go. And I'm going to come here to not the very center, but over here. Notice my little mouse changes to little arrows, and then I can drag him around and put him in the proper location there. So you want to make sure he, of course, totally fits in the screen, the little green area, which is our screen that we're going to animate in. So now that we're done with resizing, all we need to do is zoom back in. And of course, we could use our mouse button. We could use this little magnifying glass down here. We can also right click and go to reset view. Reset view right here, and it is Alt 0, and that will just reset everything and zoom it all back in for us. So I like reset view. It's really simple. So now we've got our Santa in here, and you notice this is kind of a pretty good character. His legs are kind of stuck together, so we can't really separate them or anything, but his arms are fairly separate, which is kind of nice. And in fact, I'm going to make a waving Santa like I showed in the beginning video. And so what we need to do here is we need to animate this Santa, and the way we're going to do that is we're going to make a skeleton inside of him, and it's not as complicated as you might think. The way you do that is you come over here, and right above the zoom icon is this little weird thing right here. It's called a plastic tool. You can also press X. It kind of looks like a constellation of stars, but basically it's supposed to be like a little grid of triangles. And so I'm going to click on that. And it doesn't look like anything has happened, but our menu up here has changed. Now before we can do anything else, we need to hit Create Mesh. And it's going to pop up this box that's going to show us a preview of what it's going to look like. And you just want to make sure that this green kind of netting is, basically really close to your character. Again, if you don't have a transparent background, it will basically fill in the whole thing. So you must be using a transparent PNG image for this. So we're going to hit Apply. And there we go. It's put our grid, this little triangular grid, all over our Santa. So that's our step one. Also, too, you notice down here, we have now 3 columns. One's the camera, that was always there. And when I brought in my Santa, it created this one right here, and it called it column 1 automatically. And then we created this mesh just now, and that's the top layer right here. Anytime we do any sort of animation or changes to this figure, we're going to be doing it to this column 1 mesh, if you will. By the way, you can rename these just by double clicking on them. So I want to come down here and call this Santa, and maybe change this one to Santa Mesh, right? I could do that, but you certainly don't have to. All right. So remember, all animations are going to happen on the mesh layer. So you always want to make sure you have it clicked. You don't want to be down here on the camera or in the Santa, right? You want to be on the mesh. Now, we need to figure out kind of like how long our animation is going to be, at least roughly, for our beginning. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to have our Santa wave over here. And if you just kind of practice with yourself, how long does it take you to, wave? Well, takes about a second to wave, doesn't it? It doesn't take very long to wave. So what I need to do is I need to create 1 second of video, and then we'll set it up so it can loop over and over again. Now, remember, we set our frames per second at 30, and in fact it says right here what they are, at 30. And so that means for every second of video, there's going to be 30 frames. And so if I want a 1 second long video, I'm going to create a 30 frame video. And right down here's our timeline, and here's the numbers, and right there is frame 30. And that's 1 second. By the way, if you were doing a much longer video, you could come down here and see we have this little baby mountain and a kind of a bigger mountain. And if I scroll this over here closer to the baby mountains, I can really zoom out and we can get much larger numbers very easily. And also, too, I can kind of grab this little scroll bar here and I can kind of scroll in case I need to see more of the timeline. But for what we're doing right now, 30 is perfect. So I'm going to slide this back over here, and we're going to kind of zoom back in, and I'm going to scroll so we can kind of get everything on the screen. Now, right now, you notice that this little colored block right here means that our Santa video is precisely 1 frame long, which is not very long at all. So what I want to do is I want to extend that out to 30 frames. There's a couple of ways you can do that. One thing is you kind of see this little white box over here. You can kind of like grab the frame and drag it over to 30 frames. But I find it a lot easier just to click on the 30th frame here, and then right click and say fill empty cells, and it's going to extend our mesh all the way out there. And then I'm going to do the exact same thing for our actual Santa image. So now we have our mesh and our Santa all the way out to our 30 frames, which remember is just 1 second of video. So now we need to actually create a skeleton for our Santa. So let's come back over here, make sure you're on the very first frame here, and make sure you're on the mesh. So that's what we're going to do. And then notice up here it says we're in build skeleton mode. Okay, and that's perfect. That's exactly what we want. So after our mesh is created, it automatically goes over to build skeleton mode because it knows that's the very next step. Now, the way skeletons work is just like the way your real skeleton works. You notice like between your wrist and your elbow, you can't really like bend that part of your body, right? Now your wrist bends and your elbow bends, but not the middle part, right? And so that's the way bones work. And so that's the way they work in here too. Now we happen to have characters that kind of look humans, you know, like they got 2 legs and 2 arms. But bones will work on anything. They can make a tree, you know, wave back and forth. They can animate a snake. They can animate a 4-legged creature just by building the bones that basically just need to kind of fit wherever they need to stop where everything needs to bend, and they needs to be in the middle of things that don't bend. That's basically it. So you're really just going to kind of create something that's very similar to the bones inside your body. You'll see that a little bit later on, especially when we get to the arms over here. But the bottom part of this character, he doesn't really have separate feet, and so we'll just kind of treat these as just like one big foot basically. And so I'm just going to click from here from the bottom of his foot, and that's going to kind of go to his, let's see, about his waist, whatever. And that would allow us to like to swing his hips back and forth. So we can see this is the area where the bone ends, so that's where we can like bend this character. And then I'm going to come all the way up here to about where the like the center of his shoulders would be. And I'm going to click right there, and it's going to move this bone up here, which means I could kind of bend the top half of him. Down here we'd bend the bottom half, and if we wanted to move his feet or something like that, theoretically we could move it down here. But this is really kind of an anchor point. Notice the first one is kind of square. It really means, hey, this really doesn't move, and the rest of it does. Now at this point we can actually branch off of this bone, and I want to come over here and I want to give him a shoulder. So I'm just going to click right there, and that's going to be his shoulder. And then I want to give him an elbow, so we'll just click there. And then he needs a wrist, and he didn't really have fingers or anything, and we don't really want to animate individual fingers anyway, so I'm just going to like call that the whole hand here. So that's shoulders, elbow, wrist, and hands, just like the bones in your body. And then I'm going to click right here on the center one again, and that's going to allow me to extend over here and create a bow in this direction. And we're going to do the exact same thing. So that's going to be the elbow, that's going to be the wrist, and that's going to be the hand. Now for the head, we click right here, and we're just going to go up here, and this will kind of be able to tilt his head, and then I'll put this one in here to tilt his hat, and then we'll do another little one here just to be able to tilt this little bobbin on the top of his hat here, just for a little bit of fun. And believe it or not, we are pretty much done with our animation. And so let's go ahead and animate our character. And what you do is you go down from build skeleton to animate. And now I can actually move any one of these bones, and you notice our character is moving. Well, that's pretty cool. There we go. Well, that's kind of weird though. Notice how the way his face and the lower body is kind of moving with that. And as I get closer and closer, oh wow, that's not so good, right? We don't really want all this stuff over here moving with our character. So what we need to do is we need to kind of like paint on our character the places that we don't want him to move when the bones nearby move. And the way you do that is you go to Paint Rigid under the same drop-down menu. Now with Paint Rigid, what we're going to do is we're going to paint in a red color here. And this is like a paintbrush in any sort of paint program, but the red color will not show up anywhere. This just tells the program how to control the bones. And I normally set to a thickness of 5 for the painting the rigid in, but I don't like that. I like to set it like 20. You could also move this little slider over here. And you just said that little guy right there says rigid, which means we're going to paint the rigid parts of the body. I'll show you here in just a minute. If we kind of mess up, then we can go back and we can change this to flex, and then it'll paint them back, take the red away, basically erase the red, and that way we can have the character flex again if we kind of overdo it, which is kind of easy to do sometimes. But I was going to kind of go through here and it's going to paint where it was moving before that I didn't like, which was basically down this side and up there on the face. So let's kind of paint this in, because it goes by like how close you are to the bone, whether it moves or not. So it's not like a real body, so you just kind of have to like paint in away from the bone a bit there. And let's see how that works. And the best way to do it is just like to go back to animate skeleton, and then we're just going to like move him down. Okay, well that's not too bad. He's still moving slightly down here, but not nearly as much, which is not too bad. And so that's not too bad. I will go back to paint rigid again, and I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna paint in this area here, because I really don't want his legs or anything moving over here. And I know we're gonna have the same problem when we paint his or move his other arm over here a little bit, so in case we do. And so I'm just gonna like paint all that in. Whoops. Oh, okay. So I painted the wrong spot right there. I didn't want to paint there. I wanted to paint right here. So let's go to paint flex, and then notice it just takes the red away, so that we can like fix my little mistakes there, and then go back to rigid, and then kind of put that in there. Let's just go ahead and paint that in there. So there we go. Just kind of paint. I end up mostly painting almost all of characters, quite frankly, with the rigid, because you don't want them just moving, too much whenever you move the bones around. And I find it moves very easily. So I paint a lot of them here. But let's just try that for now. So we're going to go back to animate, and then let's kind of see how that moves. That's pretty good. That's still moving quite a bit, but here we go. There. Okay, that's not too bad then. So it does stretch this cloth down here, so you really can't move this arm too much without it looking wacky doodle. But just a little bit is okay. So we can might move the hand just a little bit. All right. So now we've created our bones and we kind of move stuff around. But what we want to do is we want to actually animate this character. We want to animate him down here in the timeline. And the way you do that is by setting something called a keyframe. And a keyframe is just basically a pose, and then Tahoma2d is going to figure out all the poses in between our start and end pose. And remember, we set that ease in and ease out, and it's going to use that kind of ease in and ease out, where they kind of start slower and then speed up, and then they slow down before the end. We're on our frame 1 over here, remember? And so I'm going to raise this arm up. And we'll kind of animate the hand in there a little bit, kind of pull that in there. There, that's a full high wave there. So that's looking pretty good. And then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to drag our little control over to frame 15, because 15 is halfway of our 1 second animation. And here I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to drag this all the way down and set that like that. And something kind of natural there. That doesn't look too bad. Maybe his hand be a little bit more. There we go. And you notice whenever I moved it, it automatically created that little dot right there. So that dot's a keyframe, and that dot back here in the start is a keyframe. And so right now, if we were to play our video here, it would actually move between the start, which is up, and then down for our wave, and then the rest of the second here, the last 15 frames, we just want it to go back up again, so it'll be a wavy motion. And then what we're going to do for that is we're going to cheat. And the way we're going to cheat is I'm going to come over here and I'm going to click on the first frame, and you want to make sure you click on that little dot. And by the way, it will turn blue. Notice how this one's white, but if I click on it, it turns blue. So I want this one to turn blue. It's very important. And then we're going to right click and I'm going to do copy, which is Control C. And then I'm going to come all the way over here to frame 30, and I'm just going to paste, Control V, in that keyframe. So what we've done is we made a copy, and so all this animation is going to do is just going to cycle between up, and then down, and then up, and then down, forever and ever. And the way you can see your animation is we can use this little one guy right here, loop. And so it'll just loop back and forth. There we go. So we got Santa waving. Now we got a little bit of wonkiness right there, so I might want to fix that. So let's kind of tweak our animation. So I'm going to go to that frame 15. And so that's a little bit too extreme there in that bend. So let's see what we can do here. First of all, when you wave, if you have a big wave especially, you bend your whole body toward the wave. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to bend his whole body toward the wave here. And let's see here. Let's straighten that arm out a little bit, and then maybe bring that down. There we go. So that's not too bad. It looks a little more natural. And then let's loop it again. Yeah, okay, that's pretty good looking. All right, so that's pretty much it. Actually, we have animated our Santa. Now, of course, make sure you save. So I'm going to do go up here to File. I'm going to do Save All. Normally, I would just press Control S. It's a lot quicker. And now we've saved it. So now all we got to do is export our video out. We've set up our bones, we've set up the green screen, we've animated him, and so let's export our final video. So what you do is you come up here to the menu that says Render, and you always want to first go to the Output Settings, and we need to check on these here. Now, you notice that the start frame is 1 and the end frame is 30. Well, that's great, because how did it know, though, that we wanted, our movie ends in 30 frames? Well, what happened was when we copied over, when we copied those frames out here, it moved this corner right there. See that little white corner? That is the end of the video, and you can actually slide those around. Now, when this dialog's up, you can't slide them around. But if I was to close this, I could actually slide these around. So if I wanted to start on frame 3 and end on frame 33, I could just slide these little corners around. But normally, it sets them correctly. And so as long as they're set correctly, you don't need to move them, basically. But that's how you would move them if you needed to. So just double check you're on frame 1 is the start, frame 30 on the end. So that's perfect. So we don't need to change anything there. Now, the save in, it puts it in its own output folder. And that output folder will be wherever you have the Tahoma2d folder in. Right now it's on my desktop or whatever. It'll be buried in there in like a structure. That's a little bit too hard for me to find. So I'm going to click on those 3 little dots, and I'm going to pick desktop. So it's going to save the video on my desktop. And now the next one too we need to change. First of all, this is going to be the name of our movie file, and I think I already have a Santa 1 out there, so I'm going to call this Santa 2. And I don't want TIFF images. If you select TIFF or you leave it on TIFF by accident, what it's going to do is it's going to create a picture for every frame of your video, which means it's going to create 30 pictures on your desktop. So you want to be really careful and make sure you change that to MP4, which is the movie format, MP4. And that's basically it. By the way, you can hit render here, and if you hit save and render, it will actually remember these settings. And so I want to do save and render, and just wait until it's done. There we go. And so it is all done. So I can just close that, and let's minimize Tahoma2d. And if I come down here, here's my Santa 2 video, and if I double click on this, there's a green screen video of Santa 2 here, of him waving there. And by the way, if we loop that video, it would just keep going over and over again in our video editor. So that is perfect. All right, so there's our very first animation in Tahoma2d. And that's all we're going to be doing for today. But we're going to do a whole series of videos, and the next time we're going to be doing the witch as she flies across the screen, and then after that we're going to actually sync Santa here to maybe say ho ho ho, or maybe sing along a little bit to a song or something like that. Very crudely, not the best, but you could actually do some pretty cool stuff like that. But those will all be in future videos. So thank you very much for watching this video today, and until next time, I'll talk to you later.